Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for all joining us. Thank you for all joining us today for the 40th Majlis for Marhum Sajjad, Abdulrazak, Jaffer. It hopefully will be a shorter program, but thank you for all joining us. And we're going to start with a short video clip from the grandchildren of the Marhum. And just before we start that, if everybody could recite Surah Fateha for Marhum.
Thank you.
We're coming to my Nana's Majlis.
Please
keep them in your prayers. Let me tell you the story of the Hadith Qissa. Shall I tell you the story of the event of the Prophet Qissa? He went to the house of his daughter Fateha. Then he asked her the Yemeni special. She covered him with the Yemeni Qissa. Special like the Surah news. After some others came to join it. Do you want to know who? Then came Hassan, greeted his mother. Salamun alayki ya Ummah. I can smell the nice smell of my grandfather. So he joined him under the Qissa.
Then came Hussein.
Salamun alayki ya Jannah.
Then came Hussein
And greeted his mother.
Salamun alayki ya Ummah. I can smell the nice smell of my grandfather. So he joined him under the Qissa. Then came Ali, Amir al-Mu'minin. Salamun alayki. Jannah, you are clean. I can smell the nice smell of my
cousin.
brother. So he joined him under the Qissa.
Then
Fatima.
I went close to the Prophet. He said,
Salam
Oh Father,
alaikum. Oh,
Father, did you give me permission to now enter? Yes, he too went under the Qissa. Now I gathered under the Qissa. Jibreel woke up and said, Oh Allah, who are these numerous personalities lying under the Qissa?
they were
Family of Fatima, husband, sons, and her father. They are the ones who are perfectly glorified. They are the Ahlul Qissa, the Ahlul Bayt of Zahirah.
Allah.
Muhammad.
Please recite Surah Fateha. Bismillah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in.
Ihdina.
Siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim. Ghayril maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin.
Bismillah.
Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim.
Qul
Huwallahu ahad. Allahu samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. Kufuwan ahad.
Lam yakul lahu.
Kufuwan كفوا أحد
اللهم
صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
Thank you again for the nice video. Next we have Irfan Shirazi, Sajjad Uncle's youngest son-in-law. He's going to be reciting Hadith Kisa.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عن جابر بن الله الأنصاري عن فاطمة الزهراء عليه السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم أنها قالت دخل علي أبي رسول الله في بعض الأيام فقال السلام عليك يا فاطمة فقلت عليك السلام قال إني أجد في بدني ضعفا فقلت له أويدك بالله يا أبتا من عطاف فقال يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولد الحسن قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه فقلت وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي فقال يا أمه إني أشم عندك راية طيبا كأنها راية جد رسول الله فقلت نعم إن جدك تحت الكساء فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضك أذنت لك فدخل معه تحت الكساء فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولد الحسين قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا عماه فقلت وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي فقال لي يا أماه إني أشم عندك راية طيبا كأنها راية جد رسول الله فقلت نعم إن جدك وقاف تحت الكساء فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جدة السلام عليك يا من اختار الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي وشافع أمتك قد أذنت لك فدخل معه تحت الكساء فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله فقلت وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك راية طيبا كأنها راية أختي وابن عمي رسول الله فقلت نعم ها هو ما ولديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال له عليك السلام يا أخي وسي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائك أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء، ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بدأتي قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء، فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ برسول الله بطرف الكساء وأومى بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي، لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي، يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم. أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن أعداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم، إنهم مني وأنا منهم. فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم، واذهب عنهم رجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. فقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان السماوات إني ما خلقت سماعا مبنيا ولا أرضا منهية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيا ولا فلك يدور ولا بحر يجري ولا فلك يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل يا ربا ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة، هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. فقال جبرائيل يا ربا تأذن لي أن أحبط إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله نعم قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله العلي الأعلى، يقرئك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماعا مبنيا ولا أرضا مدهيا ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمس مضيئة ولا فلك يدور ولا بحر يجري ولا فلك يسري إلا ليتكم ومحبتكم. وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم، فهل تأذنني يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء، فقال لي أبي إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. فقال علي لأبي يا رسول الله اخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي والذين بعثني بالحق نبيا واستفاني بالرسالة النجية ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلا أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي عليه السلام إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعة رب الكعبة. فقال أبي رسول الله يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واستفاني بالرسالة النجية ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا وفيهم محموما إلا وفرج الله همه ولا مغموما إلا وحشف الله غمه ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي عليه السلام إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة. سلام بركة الفاتحة.
Next, we have Surah Yasin by Marhum Sajjad's cousin, brothers Siddiq Jaffer. Brother Sadiq, if you could turn off your mic, you have to unmute yourself. Sadiq, if you just check your mic is unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me now? Jaffer? Hello?
Yes, Sadiq, we can hear you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي للأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشرهم بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فأعددنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم ولمسنكم منا عذاب عليم قالوا طائركم معكم أن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما ليعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قوم من بعد من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتي من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواجها كلها مما تنبت الأرض من أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلهم منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى ذاك الأرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل السابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشاء نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منها ومطاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها مؤرزين وإذا قيل لهم له أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا ونطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مركبنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد ضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانة فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكس في الخلق أفلا يأكلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وظللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم يروا الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحيي الذي أنشاها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأحزر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون. سورة المباركة الفاتحة.
Next, we have Mehdi reciting Surah Jummah. Mehdi, if you could unmute yourself when we request it.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يسبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض الملك القدوس العزيز الحكيم هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين وآخرين منهم لما يلحقوا بهم وهو العزيز الحكيم ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لم يحملوها كمثل الحمار يحمل أسفارا بئس مثل القوم الذين كذبوا بآيات الله والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين قل يا أيها الذين هادوا إن زعمتم أنكم أولياء لله من دون الناس فتمنوا الموت إن كنتم صادقين ولا يتمنونه أبدا بما قدمت أيديهم والله عليم بالظالمين قل إن الموت الذي تفرون منه فإنه ملاقيكم ثم تردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون فإذا قضيت الصلاة فانتشروا في الأرض وابتغوا من فضل الله واذكروا الله كثيرا لعلكم تفلحون وإذا رأوا تجارة أو لهوا انفضوا إليها وتركوك قائما قل ما عند الله خير من اللهو ومن التجارة والله خير الرازقين صدق الله العلي العظيم.
اللهم صل على. Next, we're going to have Sajjad Uncle's son, Ali Hussein. He's going to be reciting Surah Mulk in English.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Blessed is the one in whose hands rests all authority, and he is most capable of everything. He is the one who created death and life in order to test which of you is best in all in deeds, and he is the Almighty, all-forgiving. He is the one who created 7 heavens, one above the other. You will never see any imperfection in the creation of the most compassionate. So look again. Do you see any flaws? Then look again and again. Your sight will return frustrated and weary. And indeed, we adorned the lowest heaven with stars like lamps and made them as missiles for stoning eavesdropping devils, for whom we have also prepared the torment of the blaze. Those who disbelieve in their Lord will suffer the punishment of hell. What an evil destination. When they are tossed into it, they will hear its roaring as it boils over, almost bursting in fury. Every time a group is cast into it, its keepers will ask them, "Did a warner not come to you?" They will reply, "Yes, a warner did come to us, but we denied and said, Allah has revealed nothing. We are extremely astray." And they will lament, "If only we had listened and reasoned, we would not be among the residents of the blaze." And so they will confess their sins. So away with the residents of the blaze. Indeed, those in awe of their Lord without seeing him will have forgiveness and mighty reward. Whether you speak secretly or openly, he surely knows best what is hidden in the heart. How could he not know his own creation? For he alone is the most subtle, all aware. He is the one who smoothed out the earth for you, to move about in its regions and eat from his provisions, and to him is the resurrection of all. Do you feel secure that the one who is in heaven will not cause the earth to swallow you up as it quakes violently? Or do you feel secure that the one who is in heaven will not unleash upon you a storm of stones? Only then would you know how serious my warning was. And certainly those before them denied as well. Then how severe was my response? Have they not seen the birds above them, spreading and folding their wings? None holds them up except the most compassionate. Indeed, he is all-seeing of everything. Also, which powerless force will come to your help instead of the most compassionate? Indeed, the disbelievers are only lost in delusion. Or who is it that will provide for you if he withholds his provisions? In fact, they persist in arrogance and aversion to the truth. Who is rightly guided, the one who crawls face down, or the one who walks upright on the straight path? Say, O Prophet, he is the one who brought you into being and gave you hearing, sight, and intellect, yet you hardly give any thanks. Also say, he is the one who has dispersed you all over the earth, and to him you will all be gathered. Still they ask the believers, when will this threat come to pass, if what you say is true? Say, O Prophet, that knowledge is with Allah alone, and I am only sent with the clear warning. Then when they say the torment drawing near, the faces of the disbelievers will become gloomy, and it will be said to them, this is what you claimed would never come. Say, O Prophet, consider this, whether Allah causes me and those with me to die, or shows us mercy, who will save the disbelievers from a painful punishment? Say, he is the most compassionate, in him alone we believe, and in him alone we trust. We will soon know who is clearly astray. Say, consider this, if your water were to sink into the earth, then who else could bring you flowing water? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Next, we're going to have Mercia recited by by Zamin. If you can just double check you're unmuted, Zamin. Zamin, I think we're just waiting for you to unmute yourself. We're just going to send you the request to unmute yourself. We should be able to hear you now, Zamin.
Okay. एक बार और मुझे गोद में ले लो बाबा एक बार और मुझे गोद में ले लो बाबा वापस ना का हुआ शोर हरम में बर्पा होके रुखसत जो चले गए से शाहे कर वो बला सुन के ये दौरी सकीना के ठहर जाओ जरा एक बार और मुझे गोद में ले लो बाबा एक बार और मुझे गोद में ले लो बाबा शान बच्ची का ये हाल परेशान देखा रोके फरमाया क्या हाल मेरी माँ है का जोड़ के नान से हाथों से सकीना ने कहा एक बार और मुझे गोद में ले लो बाबा एक बार और मुझे गोद में ले लो बाबा बाबा सीने से सकीना को लगाते जाइए अब कहा होगी मुलाकात बताते जाइए तुझको अकबर की कसम ऊंचा दहाए का सदका एक बार और मुझे गोद में ले लो बाबा एक बार और मुझे गोद में ले लो बाबा अब मैं प्यासी हूँ न पानी की जरूरत है मुझे कोई हाजत नहीं बस इतनी सी हसरत है मुझे देख लूँ आज मेरी बरकत तुम्हारा चेहरा एक बार और मुझे गोद में ले लो बाबा एक बार और मुझे गोद में ले लो बाबा अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मुहम्मद
Thank you, Zaman, for the beautiful recitation. Next, we're going to have a short video by Ali Jessa, who is the son-in-law of Marhum Sajjad.
When I cry, I will say, Salu an Nabi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. When I shout, Ya Hussein. When I cry, Ya Hussein. When I shed all my tears, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. Every day Ashura, every land Karbala, every word that we say, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. When I shout, Ya Hussein. When I cry, Ya Hussein. When I shed all my tears, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. When we lift up your flag, we remember your name. When the world all is one, calls to you, O Hussein. We will stand by your side, as we know you're our guide. We will stand by your side, as we know you're our guide. In our hearts you remain, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. When I shout, Ya Hussein. When I cry, Ya Hussein. When I shed all my tears, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. When Muharram arrives and our tears start to flow, and the love in our hearts for Hussein only grows. We will raise our arms, we will send our salams. We will raise our arms, we will send our salams. Every 10th we will cry, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. When I shout, Ya Hussein, when I cry, Ya Hussein, when I shed all my tears, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. As we walk to your shrine, in our minds we reflect how you fought for Islam, we will never forget. But today you're alive, and your message will thrive. But today you're alive, and your message will thrive, running through our veins. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. When I shout, Ya Hussein, when I cry, Ya Hussein, when I shed all my tears, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. They will never destroy, they will never erase all the love that we have for our Master Hussein. Every night, every day, every place, everywhere. Every night, every day, every place, everywhere. We will echo the cry of Labbaik Ya Hussein. When I shout Ya Hussein, when I cry Ya Hussein, when I shed all my tears, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. We will never submit to the likes of Yazid. They have martyred Hussein, but we are his seed. We will show them the way, we will never betray. We will show them the way, we will never betray. Our blessed Imam, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. When I shout Ya Hussein, when I cry Ya Hussein, when I shed all my tears, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. So today we await the Imam of our time, who will bring peace on earth to the whole of mankind. Allah Jal Ya Imam, Ya Imam Zaman. Allah Jal Ya Imam, Ya Imam Zaman. We will follow your cry of Labbaik Ya Hussein. When I shout Ya Hussein, when I cry Ya Hussein, when I shed all my tears, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. Sallu al Nabi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Surah al-Mubarak al-Fatiha.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you once again, Ali, for a beautiful recitation. Next, we're going to have Sheikh Ali Hussein Datu from UK give us a short talk. Sheikh Ali Hussein was actually supposed to come here 6 months ago to do the nikah for myself and Sajjad's other daughter, Kaniz and Khatija. Now he's going to be here to give us the majlis. Sheikh Ali Hussein, can you just confirm that you're unmuted?
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا محمد بن عبد الله وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم وقوله الحق وهو أصدق الصادقين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. Respected elders, brothers, sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As Ali just mentioned, it's strange that I would have been meeting Sajjad uncle during the wedding, but Allah has a different plan. And today I sit here before you giving a talk on his 40th after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to take him back from everybody and to take him back into his own dominion and kingdom and place him into his own paradise. As we learn from all of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, you and I will be given trials and tribulations in this world that we won't understand. At least many of them will find it difficult to understand, maybe on the onset. And maybe as time goes by, we'll understand why Allah tested us in the way in which He did, and sometimes we'll never understand. Sometimes until we take our last breath, we won't know why Allah tested us in the way He did. What we can be certain about is that the Lord of mercy only desires good, and only good emanates from Him. Evil can't come from God. Evil is only created by the hands of man, as the Quran also states. So in that we take solace, and we see from the lives of the Ahlul Bayt that they too took solace. Imam Hussein's famous call, رَضًا بِقَضَائِهِ وَتَسْلِيمًا لِأَمْرِهِ, where he says that we are pleased with his decree and we submit to his command, indicates to you and I that there is wisdom behind God's actions, and we simply have to come to terms with them and finally accept them and surrender to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan has been in this life and the plan that He has for us. This last year has undoubtedly taught us a great deal. We've learned, so long as we haven't been too fixated on our work, on family affairs and issues surrounding them, each and every one of us would have been forced to take a bit of time out and really take a step back and take a reality check and understand what exactly is happening in the world around us. I don't think anybody who's present here today will have gone through a year like 2020, where the entire world is being tested in the same fashion, some more than others, but the common denominator between each and every test throughout every country was exactly the same. From travel restrictions coming into place, to hospitals being built within a few days, to hospitals then being full and being on the brink of collapse. All of this happened continuously throughout the world, and everybody was affected and tested in the same fashion. It reminds me of the verse in Surah Baqarah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ. And we will test you with regards to fear, with regards to hunger, وَنَقْسٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ, and by taking away your wealth, by taking away lives, people that you live with, وَالثَّمَرَاتِ, and even the fruits of your life, the fruits of your efforts, they too will be taken away. And then He summarizes and He concludes. And Allah says, وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ, but give glad tidings to those who are patient. It's only the patient ones who are able to get through certain difficulties. You and I know that life is very short. This last year has taught us that. We've seen people who are healthy with us all of a sudden being taken away from us. We've seen young go, we've seen old go. We've seen young being crippled, we've seen old being crippled. And it's happened before, but specifically in this last year, we saw it all around the news and we saw it before our eyes as well. There was a time here in Istanbul that there were 5 to 6 ghusl taking place in one day. It was unprecedented. But what it did was it taught everybody around that we cannot take life for granted. Some people have indicators that their life is going to come to an end, and for others, it's absolutely instant. The value that has become clear to us is the value that time has. If we move into this next year as individuals who maintain a lazy stance when we have free time, individuals who are willing to waste the time that is at our disposal right now, then truly we haven't learned much. In the 15-20 minutes at my disposal, I'd like to touch upon this particular aspect to try and help us that bit more in not taking time for granted. Some of us, alhamdulillah, we're healthy, we have additional time on our hands. Some are younger, they have even further time, relatively speaking, and probability wise, they have more time on their hands. Others have ease of sustenance, again, they have more time on their hands. So it shouldn't come as much of a surprise that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dedicates an entire chapter in the Quran talking about time and talking about how man, generally, mankind, each and every one of them is at a loss, except for a small group of people. Most are at loss because they take time for granted, because it comes and the only thing they do is waste it. It comes and they don't think about how to use it, how to capitalize on it. Instead, as people have free time, they decide to indulge in their desires until the next day comes. And as you'll see from some of the examples I'd like to give, with the advent and the progress that science makes, technology makes, it's so much easier to get more time on our hands. And at the same time, it's so much easier to waste its time that God gives us. Allah concludes Surah Al-Asr by saying that it's only those who believe and do righteous deeds are going to be successful. He's given us a formula that if you want to be successful in this life, you're going to have time, and your duty is to use it wisely. And the only group of people who will be able to use it in the fashion in which God says will bring about success in this dunya and the next will be those who believe and those who do good deeds. It's no use having one without the other. There's no point in doing good deeds but not believing. Neither is there any point in believing and not doing good deeds. They come hand in hand. Our duty, as you very well know, is to make ourselves with every passing day. But not only is our duty to make ourselves better is to work on ourselves and to focus on it. But the other aspect is that we have a duty on each other. We have a duty to make an impact on people around us. There's a reason that you live in the country that you live in, and I live in the country I live in. There's a reason why you have the parents you have, and I have the parents I have, the friend circles, the siblings. There's a reason why all of this has been put in place, because you are the best individual to have an impact on those around you. That's why God has given you that task and that mission. There's no point becoming a hermit in a mountain and just impacting ourselves and changing ourselves without impacting the lives of others. As you know, the Prophet never did this. The Imams never did this. There were times that they took out from society, short periods of time, stints of times. But aside from that, the majority of the time, they lived within society. They affected and impacted society around them. This last year has taught us that we're in this together. One of the famous slogans that always is mentioned when it comes to healthcare is that you have to look after each other. We're in this together. There's no point in a young individual who's healthy coming out on the streets and acting and going about his daily chores like he would normally do outside of this pandemic and simply saying that I'm not going to be affected because the probability of me becoming sick is very minute. I'm healthy, I'm young. If I do get this virus, I probably will be asymptomatic and I'll just get immunity to it and then move on. That's a very selfish way of looking at life. And we realize that. And that's why even the healthy have to take precaution, not because they will necessarily become affected, but because they may negatively affect and impact others. Instead of positively impacting others, they may do it in a negative fashion. The religion teaches us the same. It teaches us that we're in this journey to get to God. وَأَنَّ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ الْمُنْتَهَى, as the Quran says, and to your Lord is the final destination. This trial that we have to overcome hurdles on a daily basis, that we have a duty of becoming more moral. It's not just a duty that I have to myself. It's a duty that I have to the people around me as well. That I have a duty to my family to assist them in making them moral individuals on a daily basis. A duty to my community as well. A duty to my friend circle. You look at the acts of worship in the Quran, prayers. The most emphasized type of prayer for the daily prayers is when we do it in congregation. Allah from the onset is pushing you and I to do things so that we impact one another, so that we affect the lives of others. When you look at breaking your fast, it's encouraged to sit together, encouraged to do it in a congregation, that you smile with each other, you have a social life with other people, you laugh with one another, you bring a smile on the face of people around you. You let people enjoy your company, let them benefit from you, and you benefit from them. There's a social aspect to the religion which is highly emphasized, which we cannot turn an eye away from. You look at Hajj, it has to be done again, everybody at the same time. Why? It pushes you and I towards doing something that will impact people around us. We don't just do it as and when we're free, when we have the ability to go, we just go for Hajj at any time. It's at a specific time so that you congregate with people that you will probably never meet in your life again, that you make friends and you build a relationship with people that you would not have done otherwise, that you get to assist people in a fashion in which you probably would never have been able to assist them previously. When you come to social vices as well, you realize that we have a duty towards one another. People speak continuously about the social vice of backbiting and gossiping. That's a duty that we have to one another. Not just that I remain away from it, but that I don't cultivate an environment that you and I both fall into speaking negatively about other people. Accusation, slander, lying, these are all social vices that we've been taught continuously by the Prophet and the Imams, that we have a duty towards one another. Me lying and taking benefit from you has affected you adversely, has affected the amount of wealth that you'll take home to your family, has a ripple effect, the amount of charity you'll be able to give, the gifts that you could have bought your children, simply because I lied and I cheated and I took away wealth that was actually allotted to you. There's a duty that we have to one another, to society around us, to the environment around us, to the animals around us. Each and everything around us has a right upon us. And that's exactly what Islam teaches us, that we have a duty towards one another in this life to ensure that we make ourselves and others moral as every day passes. At the same time, there's another side to the coin, as I mentioned, and that is to work on ourselves and to not waste our own time in not working on this very self that we have for a permanent basis, this very soul that will take me on my next journey. You know how much time we spend in looking good physically, that every 2 weeks we'll make sure we go to the barbers to make sure we look the part, that when we dress up and we go to work, if we're going to meet other people, there's a very big difference in this whole pandemic and lockdown when you were sitting behind a computer screen and just working from home when the webcam was off, compared to when the webcam goes on and you're in a conference. You make sure you look good. You make sure you look presentable. In the very same way, this presentation and this looking good is for a mere 60, 70, 80, 90 years. Not many people tend to live above 90 years, let alone 80 years. Not many people live above that mark in a common day and age. So we're physically beautifying ourselves for this short period of time, whereas this soul we know is going to be with us permanently. It's going to be with us continuously. In that next realm of barzakh, where we will be quite confused as to what's happening, because it'll be the first time that we will live a life without actual matter within. We'll see colors, but there won't be anything 3D, there won't be anything physical in that life. It's going to be a difficult life to get used to initially. And then on the day of judgment, a very different scenario. And then finally, our entrance, inshallah, into heaven will be with ease. But that journey before we get to heaven, that journey is where this soul will assist us the most. If we can beautify it before we leave this life, or meager life of 70, 80 years, you got to put it on a pan. And you got to see how much we beautify this physical body and see whether or not we put the same, if not more effort into beautifying this spiritual one. As I was saying, this coin has two sides. Impacting other people is one thing, but impacting yourself and changing yourself and using time for yourself and making sure you don't waste time is also a great duty that we have on our shoulders. The Prophet did it. I mean, the Prophet spent a great deal of his life guiding people, speaking to individuals, helping and assisting, going to battle, propagating the religion. That was there. But at the same time, and especially in the first 40 years, when you look at his life, you see that he went on these retreats, that he took time out, especially in the night, for himself, be it in contemplation, be it in walking in the streets and just thinking and looking around, be it in migrating, be it in going to the mountains and taking time out. And this is what I'd like to touch upon, that you and I are creatures of habit. Recently, I've been listening to this book that I'd hardly recommend to you. It's called Atomic Habits. You know, we've been spoiled in the life that we live in today, in the age in which we live in today, spoiled in a good fashion. But you know, whenever God gives you a blessing, your duty increases as well. Previously, 10, 15 years ago, you remember car journeys would be quite boring. You'd have to go on a 2, 3 hour journey, and you'd probably not gain much from driving for 2, 3 hours. But now we have the ability to listen to something and gain knowledge whilst we're driving as well. You can download an audiobook, you can subscribe to a certain podcast, and you can continuously be gaining knowledge, reflecting on what you're hearing, thinking about it. And with ease of gaining knowledge will obviously come a greater responsibility of acting upon the knowledge that you and I now have. I wanted to run you through a few aspects of this book, which I thought were extremely beneficial, and put an Islamic perspective on them to see how we can understand them from the eye of the religion and implement them in our day-to-day lives. This book talks about habits, it talks about adopting positive habits and removing negative traits and habits from ourselves. He defines habits as an act that we can automate in our lives, something that we can do without thinking. We do it so often. Initially, it requires some brain power, but finally, we can fall into that habit that we do it without even thinking twice. It's still an act that we do consciously, but we don't have to exert so much effort into it. If we look at our daily lives, we find that God has put, if I can call it a habit within us, to pray. Somebody can make it their habit to pray on time because of the app that they have on their phone, the alarm that will go off, the adhan will go on time. They'll look at the salat time beforehand, they'll know that they'll put their meetings before and after. Somebody wants to give charity, they stipulate, for example, Friday, and they'll continuously go and give charity on Friday. These are habits that you and I have inculcated within our lives. However, there's three aspects that I think are mentioned in this book that are quite eye-opening that I wanted to share with you before I conclude. Firstly, he speaks about removing negative habits. When we say negative as individuals who are religious, we mean immoral actions. Something that is negative to us means something that is immoral. As soon as something is immoral, it's against akhlaq, it's against the sharia, it's something that is disliked by God at the very least, if not haram. Those are things that we need to distance ourselves from. But sometimes we find it very difficult. We find it very difficult to change ourselves. And he mentions a great practical point. He says that one of the easiest ways to remove a negative habit or a bad habit from you is by looking at the environment which makes you fall into that habit. If, for example, you find that you gossip a lot, it's probably because of the friend circle that you and I have. changing that environment, not spending so much time with those friends will probably decrease the amount of gossip that we fall into. Somebody who finds that they're habituated to listening to music, it's probably because of the playlist that they've saved on their phone. Simply changing the environment, deleting that playlist, removing that subscription will easily allow them to move away from that negative habit. Sometimes we watch nonsense on TV or on our laptops or on our phones. It's probably because we have so much time on our hands that we haven't made a routine for ourselves. We don't have a goal in sight. Today's the weekend, and under the guise of relaxation, I'm just going to sit in front of the TV for the next 2, 3 hours and just watch. That allows us to indulge in our desires. And the next thing you know, you've spent 2, 3 hours of your life watching something that has given you no benefit. Somebody who cannot wake up for Fajr, it's probably because they've fallen into this bad habit of staying awake at night to such an extent that their body clock does not allow them to wake up within the next 3, 4 hours, despite the fact that they might put 10 alarms. They need to change that environment. Instead of keeping that TV in their room, put it away. If they can put some sort of time restriction on themselves, then let them do that. If they can move the TV to another room, let them do that. He speaks interestingly about social media, and he says that he was addicted to going on to all these different platforms and looking at what people have said about him and responding to him. And he used to use it and say that this is just for me to keep in touch with friends and relatives who are far away. But when he took a step back, he found that he was indulging so much time into it that it was literally a waste of his life. The number of hours he would spend looking at other people's comments, and then recommended posts would come inside, and then you'd end up, before you know it, watching something that isn't even related to what he initially set out to watch. So he changed his environment. Maybe he took a drastic step. It might work for some, may not for others. He said he told his assistant, his PA or his secretary, he gave them the duty that every Monday morning, that individual would change all of his social media passwords and then wouldn't give it to him until Friday night. And then he would use some time on the weekend to catch up with friends and family. And then the same routine would happen again on Monday. By forcing a change in his environment, initially difficult, initially he thought he needed to be in touch, he needed to watch certain things, but he realized there were other ways of doing it. There was a phone call that he could pick up and speak to friends and family, that he could chat to them through other mediums, that he could go and meet people, he could go out of his way to go and see his family. He says that after a few weeks, I realized that I was all of a sudden I had so much more time on my hands. And this is the precise point of adding positive habits to yourself. The more that you can automate your life, the more free time you have. And the more time you have, the more you can grow as a person if you don't waste that time. From an Islamic perspective, very quickly, you look at what Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam says. He says, tell me who your friends are and I'll tell you who you are. Because your environment dictates who you are. The people you spend time with, the places you go to, that will naturally have an effect on you and mold you as a character and as an individual. The fourth Imam in Dua Abu Hamza, he tells Allah, is it that you've kept away your mercy from me because you found me in the circles of the idle, jobless people just wasting my time? I didn't spend time with scholars. By scholars, it doesn't just mean scholars of religion. It means people with knowledge. That I didn't spend time with people of knowledge. Instead, I spent time with people who are just idle. Is that why you've kept your mercy away from me? If you analyze this very quickly, you look at our life of last year, we look at the bad habits that we had. Before this new year sets in completely, we can try and change our environment. Look at what it is that is making us waste time. And instead of trying to just change that habit, change the environment that facilitates that habit. And naturally, that habit will also change. That's point number one. Number two, he talks about adopting good habits. Many of us want to adopt good habits. Many of us will say, I want to recite a page of Quran a day. Many of us will say, I want to give charity on a daily basis. I want to help somebody. I want to go to a homeless shelter, for example, on a weekly basis. Sometimes we have these good intentions, but it's difficult to act upon them because we don't slot them into our diary at the right time. Think about it in this fashion. If I said that I'm going to recite Quran every day at 8 o'clock, how many times at 8 o'clock will there be something else that I need to do? Somebody will walk through the door, family, guests, some emergency will occur, a phone call will come. All of a sudden, that 8 o'clock for Quran now becomes 8 o'clock for everything else. He gives a really practical point. He says, if you want to add a habit into your life, instead of simply stipulating a time that you're going to do it, firstly, start small. And that's what Islam dictates as well. Islamic ethics and etiquettes, when we talk about changing ourselves, we say take small baby steps because we'll be able to continue. It's easier to continue a small habit compared to jumping a large step. Number one. Number two, he says, add it on, peg it on, attach it to something that we're already doing. Instead of saying, I'm going to recite Quran at 8 o'clock, say to yourself that I'm going to recite a page of Quran after Isha. You know, whether you like it or not, every day you are going to recite Salatul Isha. Even if it be late at night, you come back late from work or whatever it was, you will still pray before you sleep. That's a habit that you already have ingrained inside yourself. So if you want to add Quran in your life, as an example, then attach it to that prayer. Because as soon as you pray, which you will do every day, you'll have to do the Quran as well. If it's about giving charity, download an app on your phone that allows you with a click of a button to donate and give charity. But then specify a time in the morning when I sit in the car, before I push that button or turn that key and I start the car, at that time, I'm going to donate $1 to a charity. And because that habit of sitting in the car is already there every day, at least 5 days a week, 5 days a week, before you press that button, you'll adopt the habit of giving charity as well. Finally, and very importantly, in my opinion, he says, beware of what technology and science has been able to do for you. Don't allow technology to own you. Make sure you own technology. I don't know if you've seen this documentary called Social Media, but I highly recommend it. It analyzes what social media does from the eyes and the perspective of people who are working in those companies beforehand and have left for certain reasons. But it's amazing how much brain power and how much effort goes into making these platforms and pushing these platforms into our lives, to inculcate them within our lives, and how much time it takes from us without diverting too much. He says on this point, he says, make sure you own technology and it's not the other way around. And he gives some fantastic examples. He says, our ancestors used to have to strive to earn a living. They used to have to put in effort and time. And the whole day would go in them working hard, plowing the land, going into the fields, whatever they were at that time. But it required a full day's effort and they would come back really tired. Today, because of the advancement of science and technology, which is a good thing, it's not negative. Today, many of us can simply sit at a desk behind a computer, and within a few hours of work, with ease and comfort, we can earn our daily bread. Even if it's 8 hours, it doesn't take much effort like it used to. It's not hard labor for the majority of people. It's sitting behind a computer. And within 8 hours, you go back home and you're not as tired as somebody who would have gone to plow the land. He said, now that this has become easier and earning a livelihood has become easier, the natural effect of using less time to earn a livelihood is that you have more free time. What you do now with that free time can either grow you as a human being and as a person if you use it wisely, but if you waste it, it can completely annihilate you and make you an individual who is simply flourishing with their own desires. Another example he gives, I'm concluding in a couple of minutes, and another example he gives, he says about food. He says, simply look at 10 years ago. When you were hungry, you had to make an effort. You had to stand up from your place. You had to walk to the kitchen. You had to make food for yourself. If you were at work, You had to go out, you had to go to a restaurant, you had to buy a takeaway, you had to come back. There was effort involved. Your desire of hunger couldn't be fulfilled so quickly. But now you feel hungry, and at the slightest tinge of hunger, all of a sudden you pick up your phone. In a few clicks, you have food at your doorstep. You've saved so much time in preparation of food. But now, what do you do with that time that you've saved? Are you using it to your own benefit, or are you using it to your detriment? And finally, he gives a brilliant example about technology. He says, at the slightest feeling of boredom, as soon as you feel bored, what used to happen 20 years ago when we were bored? 20 years ago, you were bored, you'd have to find something to do. You had to pick up a book, you had to speak to somebody. If you didn't have a TV 60, 70 years ago, you had to try and find other ways of using your time, which were probably beneficial. But today, at the slightest feeling of boredom, you can pick up your phone and you've got a complete world that you can immerse yourself in and not feel bored. You look at a video and all of a sudden you've got a recommended video and you're touching the next video and the next video. The example he gives is of video streaming websites. Is when you sit at night and you're watching this episode. 10 years ago, the effort that was required for you to indulge in your desire was to pick up your remote and press OK so that you watch the next episode. But today, even that has gone away. You simply have to keep your eyes open. That's the test for your desires. And you simply wait for that bar to move along and the next episode begins. He says technology can work both ways. Either you can gain time by using it and making good habits from it, or you can give up your time and surrender yourself and all the time that Allah is giving you now in your life because of the easy life that He's given us today compared to what ancestors had to go through, compared to what our grandparents had to go through. We have an easy life. But if we use it in the right way, we'll become much greater individuals. Something I know about Marhum Sajjad is that he was a man who loved, and I think love is probably a light word, but he intensely loved the ziyarah of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and the Ahlul Bayt. Dr. Isa was mentioning to me a month or so ago that since 2001, they had gone together as partners every year for ziyarah. You can learn from such a man. You can learn that you can make such a positive habit. Like you can put a portion of your sustenance aside. You can put a few weeks of your life aside and make it a habit that every year, that every 6 months, that every 2 years, whatever is possible for you, that you'll spend that time and that money and that wealth and that health that God has given you in going to the ziyarah of these imams. And undoubtedly, Sajjad uncle right now is seeing the fruits of the effort and the time that he spent in going for the ziyarah of these individuals. There's a beautiful hadith that I conclude with, where on the day of judgment, it is said that it will be instructed to the people who went for the ziyarah of Imam al-Hussein that you can now enter into paradise. And at that time, they will be seated under the throne of Allah, taking the shade of the throne, sitting with Imam al-Hussein, speaking to him, sitting in his company, and they'll be told, you can now enter into heaven. You know what their reply was, or their reply will be? Their reply will be that we prefer the company of Hussein rather than entering into heaven. If Hussein is not in heaven, then we'd rather sit outside on the plains of the day of judgment with Hussein rather than going into Jannah without Hussein. It reminds me of what happened on the day of Ashura, where Imam al-Hussein told Ali al-Akbar, when he comes back for water, he tells his son, go and fight a little more, and very soon you shall see your grandfather, and he will give you a drink after which you shall never be thirsty again. These positive habits of going for ziyarah of going to the mosque, of praying a bit more. These social habits, these personal habits that make us more moral individuals will do exactly that. As Ali al-Akbar was taking his final breath, he turns to his father and he says, "Oh, my father, I see my grandfather. He has a message for you." He says, "Hurry up towards me." And at that time, he's giving him a drink. And that was the drink that Imam said will never make him thirsty again. As soon as we close our eyes and we go to the next world, if we have this habit of sending salutations, be it reciting ziyarah after every prayer, be it going for ziyarah every year, we know, and we must be certain of it, that those individuals will come to aid us in our grave, and our next life in Barzakh will be with them in a garden of bliss. وآخر الدعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. I ask you to please raise your hands and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that whatever benefit and good has come out from this gathering, these recitations, this majlis, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gift it to Marhum Sajjad. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive him his sins, to elevate him and place him in the companionship and in the gardens next to those of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to engulf his family with patience so that they can bear this loss. وصلى الله على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. سورة مباركة الفاتحة.
Thank you, Sheikh Ali Hussein, for a beautiful lecture, and hopefully we can take some lessons from that and take the advice that you've shared with us and continue to learn and to follow those practices. Next, we have Ali Hussein, who is Marhum Sajjad's son. He's just going to say a few words. Ali Hussein, if you can join us.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. My name is Ali Hussein, and I'm Marhum Sajjad Jaffer's son. I want to thank everybody for tuning into this majlis. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to be here with us. Also, thank you to everyone who has been there for us by sending us your prayers, your well wishes, and kind words, as this is what has helped us get through this difficult time. In this short eulogy, I would like to speak a little bit about what my dad meant to me. My father was the type of guy who was everyone's best friend. The type of guy who knew the value of respecting others and was always there to lend an ear to those who needed to talk. He was the backbone to a lot of people. If someone had a problem or simply needed encouragement, they always knew who to call. Despite his tough persona, my dad had a soft heart. He would do anything and everything to help someone in need. He was an electric personality who made a room feel alive. He was always laughing and poking fun. His humor was a way to connect to people and make others happy, because he only really teased the people he really loved. If you were speaking to him, he made you feel as if you were the only person in the room. His hospitality and graciousness knew no bounds. When my dad used to invite guests over for a majlis or barbecue, or simply just to hang out, he would always make it his sole purpose to ensure that his guests felt at home and needed for nothing. He truly enjoyed entertaining his friends and family, and it gave him a lot of joy when those around him were having a good time. If you were ever lucky enough to be a guest of my father's, you know the struggle of him making you eat way more than your stomach could handle. As a father, my dad raised 6 kids and made it so that we never wanted for anything. He taught us how to act through his actions. His love for his family knew no bounds, as he would move heaven and earth to ensure our safety and happiness. To me, my dad was my umbrella. He shielded me from all the problems of the world. No matter how hard things were for him, He would always make sure I was happy and taken care of. And this is something that now I appreciate more than ever. Faith was a huge part of my dad's life. And his love for Allah and Marhumeens was immense. He never forgot to thank Allah for all he was blessed with and would never forget the Ahlul Bayt. I recall on one of the last nights I spent with him in the hospital, his love for Imam Hussein was still present and stronger than ever. Despite the fact that my father could barely talk and barely move. In the middle of the night, he mustered up the strength to position himself upright and yelled to the best of his ability, "Labbaik ya Hussein." After he professed his love for the Imam, he laid back down. That same night, he made sure I prayed Fajr namaz. He looked at the clock, and then he looked at me, and he whispered for me to pray. He never lost hope and never forgot Allah despite his troubles. Growing up, my dad and my grandfather placed a tremendous importance on faith with all of us. However much we groaned and complained, my dad never failed to remind us to pray. I can still remember him in the morning, energetic as ever, saying, "Ali, wake up, it's Ain Namaz time." He would never miss a Wafat at mosque and made sure we wouldn't either. He made sure to instill the values of Islam in all of us. It is now that he's reaping the rewards of his love for Islam. I know now that he's enjoying the fruits of his faith. If I can even be half the man my dad was, I will have lived a fulfilled life. Because at the end of the day, my dad lived a good life. He lived, he loved, and he enjoyed. He never really let negativity face him. His faith in Allah gave him a sense of peace that everything would always be okay, no matter what trials or tribulations came his way. He was always positive and steadfast in God's plan. I know my dad's soul is here today with all of us. So I want to end this by speaking directly to you, Papa. Thank you for everything you've done for us. Thank you for fighting for us. I know you're in a better place now with Ma and Papa, so enjoy yourself and don't worry about us. We'll be okay. I love you with all my heart. Inshallah, tona nateina, Papa.
If you recite Surah Fateha for Marhum Sajjad, his father Abdulrazak Jaffer, his uncle Marhum Mustafa Jaffer, and his mother Fateha Jaffer. Surah Fateha.
أشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب العباد وانتشت روحي وصار الدمع يجري يا إلهي خذ بقلبي للرشاد أشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب العباد وانتشت روحي وصار الدمع يجري يا إلهي خذ بقلبي للرشاد أشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب العباد وانتشت روحي وصار الدمع يجري يا إلهي خذ بقلبي للرشاد في سكون الليل يدعو في سجودي والدجى لي سواد في سواد يا رؤوفا يا رحيما يا حليما يا كريما ما لفضلك من نزال يا سميعا يا مجيبا يا عظيما اهدني يا خالق السبع الشيال شرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب وانت اشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب العباد وانتشت روحي وصارت الدمع يجري يا إلهي خذ بقلبي الرشاد إن هدى الحق وفقني إلهي فعلى توفيقك اليوم اعتمادي يا إله الكون يا عوني وعوني يا ملاك الخلق في يوم المعاد فأنا يا ربي أرجو منك عفوا عفو عن ذنبي وحقق لي مراد
never be loud of film. Salawat, not left. Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Ahsan. Let's now recite Fateha for all Marhumeens.
Thank you for being here and participating in the Zoom program. We'll have Ziyarat now and then do a Faraj after that. If we can have Dr. Isa turn on his mic and
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إلهي عزم البلاء وبرح الخفاء وانكشف الختاء وانقطع الرجاء وزاقت الأرض ومنيت السماء وأنت المستعان وعليك المشتكى وعليك المعول في الشدة والرخاء اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أولي الأمر الذين فرضت علينا طاعتهم وعرفتنا بذلك منزلتهم ففرج عنا بحقهم فرجا عاجلا قريبا كلمح البصر واقرب يا محمد يا علي يا علي يا محمد اخفيان فإنكما كافيان وانصران فإنكما ناصران يا مولانا يا صاحب الزمان الخوس 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 أدركني 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 الساعة والساعة والساعة الأجل 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 برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. I'm reciting Ziyarat al-Wa'is of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, performing the niyabat on behalf of all our parents and their parents, all our brothers and sisters, all the mu'mineen and mu'minat, all the marhumeen, in particular Marhum Sajjad, Abdulrazak, Jaffer, whose hands were on mine on every shrine we visited during Arba'ina Hussein, during Ziyarat recitation. May Allah rest his soul and all the family Marhumeen soul with the Ma'asumeen. كربة طاعة إلى الله تعالى إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. زيارة وارثة. السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفة الله. السلام عليك يا وارث نوح نبي الله. السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله. السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله. السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله. السلام عليك يا وارث محمدا حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا وارث أمير المؤمنين عليا ولي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى. السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا صار الله وابن صالح والبتر الموتور. أشهد أنك أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سميت بذلك فرزيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله أشهد أن كنت نورا في الأسلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة. لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك مطلهمات ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين. وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرزي الزكي الهادي المهدي. وأشهد أن أئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجتك على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبيا بكم موقن بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى زائركم وعلى غائبكم وعلى باطنكم. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها الشهيد وابن الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن مظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سميت بذلك فرزيت به. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأحباءه. السلام عليكم يا أصفياء الله ووداءه. السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد حسن بن علي ولي الزكي ناسي. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله. بأبي أنت وأمي تبت وتابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما. فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. السلام عليك يا أبو الفضل العباس ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن سيد وسيين. السلام عليك يا ابن أول القوم إسلاما وأقدمهم إيمانا وأقومهم به دين الله وأخوتهم على الإسلام. أشهد لك نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك فنعم الأخ المواسي. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله ما استحلت منك المحارم وانتهكت الحرمة الإسلام. فنعم السابق المجاهد المهام الناس يأخذنا في أن أخيه المجيب إلى طاعته الراهب فيما زيد في خيره من ثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل والحقك الله بدرجة آبائك في جنات النعيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولى ابن مولى. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرماء السلطان أبا الحسن علي بن موسى الرزاق شفيعنا وشفيع والدينا في يوم الجزاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا صاحب الزمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. أجل الله فرجك وسخر الله مخرجك ورزقني الله في الدنيا زيارتك وفي الآخرة شفاعتك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم إني تأرست لزيارة أبا عبد الله الحسين وأولاد الحسين رحمة في ثوابك ورجاء لمغفرتك وجزيل إحسانك، فأسألك أن تصلي على محمد وآله الطاهرين، وأن تجعل رزق بهم دارا وعيش بهم قارا وزيارتهم بهم مقبولة وأعمال بهم مقبولة ودعاء بهم مقبولة وعزاء بهم مقبولة وحياة بهم طيبة، وأدرجني إدراج المكرمين وجنة الوالدين وجنة الوالدين وجنة الوالدين وشفاء المريض. رب اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات، خصوصا سجاد عبدالرزاق جعفر، وللمسلمين والمسلمات يوم يقوم الحساب. رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. رب زدني علما ومعرفا وصبرا وحكما وارزقني فهما. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أنا عبد الله وعبدك وزيف الله وزيفك وجار الله وجارك، ولكل عبد وزيف وجار كرا وكرايا في هذه الوقت أن تسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يرزقني فكك ركبتي من النار في من تمن وادخلني الجنة برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. مع الصلوات. سورة الفاتحة.
Thank you for joining my Nana's Majlis today. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كل وليك حجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة، وذبيلا وحافظا وخيرا وناصرا حتى تسكنه زكاته وتمتعه فيها طويلا. Asante sana. Glasses.
Thank you again for participating and joining us today for our father, brother, grandfather, father-in-law, cousin, and close family friend. If we could also just recite an Amma Yujib for two people that are not well right now. Sajjad Rashid out of Dubai and Abdulrazak from Marhum. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and if we could recite one more surah.